Hello, and thanks for stopping by. London can be a pretty hectic place, so it's always a real treat when you come across an oasis of calm, a quiet spot away from the crowds and traffic where you can pause for a moment to gather your thoughts and give your senses a much needed rest. Craig's Court, where I'm standing at the moment, is one such hidden corner, and you may be surprised when you discover its location. Here, take a look. There you go. As you can see, it's just a stone's throw from Trafalgar Square, the very centre of London. Thousands of people, both tourists and Londoners alike, pass by Craig's Court every day, yet barely anyone thinks to have a peek in here, which is understandable considering it's a dead end tucked away at the end of an unassuming alley. As with much of London though, there's a lot of history to find here, which in this case includes a lost museum, a Sherlock Holmes connection, and even a secret tunnel. So, let's get stuck in. Craig's Court was established in the 1690s, which to give some context was during the reign of King William and Queen Mary, and it's named after Joseph Craig, the fellow who laid it out. Joseph Craig worked as a vestryman for the nearby parish of St Martin in the Fields, but it would appear he also had a keen eye for real estate, as the plot of land he purchased for the courtyard, which would bear his name, was situated right beside the northern tip of the mighty Whitehall Palace, a vast royal abode which, with its 1,500 rooms, stretched between the area that now lies between Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square. The road known today as Whitehall is of course named after it. In 1698 though, just a few years after Joseph had purchased the land, this lavish complex, which by that point was the largest palace in Europe, burnt down. The huge blaze was sparked by a servant who lit a fire in order to dry some laundry. So remember, next time you're having a bad day, it could be a lot worse. Although Whitehall Palace lay in smouldering ruins, one optimistic young gentleman, William Stanhope, the first Earl of Harrington, convinced himself that it would eventually be resurrected, and so he had a manor house built on Craig's Court, the idea being that it would enable him to cosy up to the monarch. This grand home came to be known as Harrington House. It was completed in 1702 and still dominates the courtyard today. However, as we now know, Whitehall Palace was never rebuilt. William Stanhope didn't get the royal neighbours he wanted, and the home he'd built to curry favour became something of a white elephant. Despite being marooned somewhat from the heart of power, Harrington House still became a place of note, and on one particular day in 1761, a Mr. Arthur Onslow, who at the time was the Speaker of the House of Commons, decided to pop by for a visit, little knowing, as he set off, that his short trip was about to revolutionise the city streets. It must be remembered that in those days London's roads were largely an unpaved mess, caked in mud and filth and piled up with manure, with pedestrians and horse-drawn traffic mingling freely amongst the quagmire. Because of this, finding a suitable path wasn't always easy, and as Arthur Onslow's coach, which being a carriage for a man of such importance was a large and ornate affair, turned into Craig's Court, the driver was alarmed to discover that the way in was a lot narrower than expected. Needless to say, the coach ended up getting jammed. So tight was the pinch in fact, that the only way to extradite Arthur was by cutting a hole in the roof of his coach. A rather undignified way to exit a vehicle, I think you'll agree, especially for a gentleman of such high office. Arthur Onslow reasoned that had the roads been more orderly and curbs put in place, this embarrassing incident could have been avoided, and so it's perhaps no coincidence that in the following year he encouraged the passing of the 1762 Westminster Paving Act, which, as the name suggests, led to the creation of pavements and curbs, thus making the city a little more orderly and easier to navigate. In the 1740s, some years before Arthur Onslow's coach mishap, Craig's Court was home to a woman named Teresa Constantia Phillips, who, whilst living here, penned a candid and scandalous autobiography entitled An Apology for the Conduct of Mrs. T.C. Phillips, which contained juicy details of bigamy and other affairs. Naturally, Georgian society was disgusted and shocked to the core, but that didn't stop Teresa from publishing 2 sequels, which of course were eagerly snapped up by readers. A 4th volume was apparently written too, although this has been long lost to time. Another interesting figure associated with Craig's Court was Charles Stanhope, aka Lord Petersham, who was a descendant of William Stanhope. Charles was born in Harrington House in April 1780, and like his peer Beau Brummell, he became quite the trendsetter during the Regency era. Both the Harrington cap and the Petersham coat were named in his honour, and he was very fond of Cossack-style trousers. Fashion aside, Charles was also rather eccentric. He would never allow himself to be seen in public before 6 PM, and he insisted on employing the colour brown as much as possible, which meant even his horses had to be brown, along with their harnesses and the coach they pulled. The obsession with this colour was apparently sparked by an intense love affair he'd had with a widow named Mary Brown. Well, whatever makes you tick, I suppose. Charles also had an unhealthy addiction to tea and snuff. The tea, you and me can probably understand, but as for the snuff, he maintained a collection of 365 boxes, which enabled him to stick a different mixture up his nose for each day of the year. Along with playing a role in helping London to get kerbs and pavements, Craig's Court was also involved in another groundbreaking innovation when, in the early 18th century, No. 9 became the headquarters for the Sun Fire Office, one of the world's earliest modern insurance companies. It's a shame they weren't around when Whitehall Palace burnt down, wasn't it? The Sun Fire Office was founded by Charles Povey, who, as a youngster, had witnessed the Great Fire of London firsthand, along with the subsequent ruin of families who had lost their homes and businesses to the blaze. Offering a way to insure goods and property, the company began life in 1708 as the Exchange House Fire Office, and business was conducted in Causey's Coffee House, which was near St Paul's Cathedral, before moving to the Royal Exchange. The company quickly evolved to become the Sun Fire Office and set up shop at No. 9 Craig's Court in 1726, where they remained for the next 140 years. Properties who signed up with the Sun Fire Office had to display this distinctive, and in my opinion slightly creepy looking plaque on their outside wall. The company is still in business today. They're now known as the Royal Sun Alliance. Another enterprise based in Craig's Court was Cox & Company, who were essentially the main bankers for the British Army. Moving into Craig's Court in 1765, Cox's remained here for almost 150 years, and are referred to by Dr. Watson at the beginning of the Sherlock Holmes short story, The Problem of Thor Bridge. Somewhere in the vaults of the Bank of Cox & Co. at Charing Cross, there is a travel-worn and battered tin dispatch box with my name, John H. Watson MD, late Indian Army, painted upon the lid. It is crammed with papers, nearly all of which are records to illustrate the curious problems which Mr. Sherlock Holmes had at various times to examine. In World War I, Cox's established a department in Harrington House which sought to find and provide details of those soldiers who were missing or wounded, and as such many concerned that other ones came here in desperate search of what they hoped would be good news. Considering how tucked away it is, you may be surprised to learn that a museum was once based at Craig's Court. This was the Museum of Economic Geology, which opened at No. 6 in 1837 under the tutelage of Henry de la Beche. Its purpose was to exhibit the application of geology to the useful purposes of life, and as such displayed all manner of rock samples which had been unearthed in mines and quarries. The Craig's Court location quickly proved too small though, and in 1846 the museum moved to a new building located between Piccadilly and Jermyn Street. The collection is now part of the Natural History Museum in South Kensington. As you may have spotted from what we've seen so far, Craig's Court is also surrounded by a trio of pubs: Walkers of Whitehall, the Old Shades, and the Silver Cross. These of course have their own stories to tell, but I think I'll save those for one of my future Exploring London's Pubs episodes. So if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, it'd be wonderful if you could please consider doing so, because this, along with clicking the bell icon, will ensure that you don't miss out whenever I publish a new video. Plus of course it'd be great to have you as a friend of the channel. Anyway, back to Craig's Court. When you consider that it was once home to a museum showcasing things found underground, it's rather appropriate that Craig's Court has another subterranean link, that being a connection with a tunnel, which also happens to be top secret. So, what I'm about to tell you, didn't hear from me, okay? The tunnel in question originated in World War II and is generally known as Q Whitehall. It's pretty long, running from beneath Trafalgar Square, where it's believed to have a connection with the Bakerloo line, and then south along Whitehall to a point beneath Horseferry Road. Along its length are various connections, mainly with government departments, and one such access point is via a lift inside this BT telephone exchange on Craig's Court. The system, which was expanded during the Cold War to link up with similar tunnels carrying communications cables beneath the city, was exposed in December 1980, when the journalist Duncan Campbell managed to break into the network, which was a very naughty thing to do, and leads me to say that, as a disclaimer, these tunnels, along with the BT exchange in Craig's Court, are of course private and strictly off limits. If you're interested in finding out more about subterranean London though, please be sure to check out my recent video about the unusual Pear Tree House bunker near Crystal Palace. I'll leave a link below. Despite its covert link, Craig's Court itself is still accessible. So, if you find yourself in the area, do pop down there for a quick look, as this forgotten London square deserves a little bit of love. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this exploration of Craig's Court, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this hidden little place in the comments. If you're happy to, likes and shares are also very much appreciated, as they really do help the channel to grow. And if there are any other similar corners of London you'd like to see covered, please do let me know. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who left such kind and thoughtful words on my previous video about Ned, the Titanic newsboy, many of which were both humbling and very moving. I'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to all new subscribers. It's wonderful to have you here, and I truly appreciate your support. Thank you. If you're not already aware, you may be interested to know that I have 2 books published: The Knowledge, Train Your Brain Like a Cabbie, and Waterloo, The History of London's Busiest Terminus, both of which are available online. I have an Etsy store too, Rob's Online Designs, where you'll find a selection of hand-illustrated mugs, featuring taxis, buses, tube trains and more. Links all in the description. For now, thanks again friends, stay well and please be sure to stay tuned.